This is a re-recording of the presentation which was made at Bela-Bela and at Thabazimbi in April 2025, which is all part of the Waterberg area. It was organised by the Waterberg Development Institute, which is committed to using tourism to benefit conservation and community. I started by talking about the guidelines for responsible tourism, which were adopted in South Africa based on the 1996 White Paper. The post-apartheid White Paper, which recognised the importance of tourism in creating employment, particularly in rural areas, for the unemployed. The guidelines which were developed subsequently were published in 2001. And in 2002, the Cape Town Conference on Responsible Tourism and Destinations took place as an official side event to the Johannesburg World Summit on Sustainable Development. And that led to the Cape Town Declaration, which was the property of all of those national, international organisations, businesses, consultants and academics who took part in the conference in Cape Town. 20 years later, 2 decades on, we drew on the experience of the Responsible Tourism Awards and practiced by responsible tourism practitioners and created the 2022 Responsible Tourism Charter, which was signed on Magna Carta Island in November 2022. And really that's the guide to those groups around the world who are taking responsibility for making tourism better. It's important to understand that tourism is a social construct. It's what we make it. It's what we make it as consumers, as holidaymakers, and what we make it as producers, whether we're providing cultural heritage attractions, national parks, hotels, craft markets. Whatever we are providing as producers of tourism services, activities and experiences, we are making tourism what it is, and therefore we can change it. And as Krippendorf pointed out, he's the father of responsible tourism, really. Every individual tourist builds up or destroys human values while they travel. And it's important, I think, that Krippendorf saw that change would come from tourists demanding something different from rebellious tourists, and locals also demanding something different, rebellious locals. And we've seen that, of course, in the demonstrations over the last few years about over-tourism and the difficulties which communities experience when tourists arrive in numbers that are overwhelming them and their community and their sense of place, their culture and their natural heritage. Krippendorf made the point, and I think it's an important one, that orders and prohibitions will not do the job, because it's not a bad conscience that we need to make progress, but positive experience, not the feeling of compulsion, but that of responsibility. The feeling that you can step up and make a difference, whether you're traveling as an individual tourist, traveling in a group, or whether you're providing tourism services in the country or sending people there. You can make tourism better, and that's what we're about. So we're using tourism to make better places for people to live in. We're using tourism to achieve sustainable development through tourism. The aspiration of responsible tourism then is to use tourism rather than to be used by it. And we are seeing a gradual evolution around the world from simply promotional work to marketing work by tourism boards and national tourist offices, seeking to attract the right kind of tourists to fit in to the destination that they're visiting. Marketing is increasingly being used as a management tool, and in some places the emphasis is moving from marketing to managing tourists as they arrive, attracting the appropriate tourists who fit in and add value in the local community. East of India, you often hear this proverb: tourism is like a fire. You can use it to cook your food, or, if you're not careful, it will burn your house down. I think we all need to remember that when we think about tourism development. We need to use it to make lives better for the people who live in the destinations, and avoid allowing tourism to destroy the destination. I say this all the time, but no business, however profitable, can address the whole of the responsible tourism agenda. It's really important that businesses, governments, municipalities look at what matters in a particular place, look at what they can address through tourism. Not every problem can be solved by tourism. Look at what the problems are, look at the materiality, the importance and significance of the problems. Think about what you can do through tourism to address those things, then do it and explain to customers, your suppliers and other businesses why you've chosen to take responsibility. Set goals, measure what you've done and report the impact of your efforts. Be sure that you get the credit for what you've done to make tourism better. It is, after all, your work that has made tourism better. So it's a relatively simple process of taking responsibility. Review what the issues are in your business and in the neighbourhoods where you operate. Determine what you can do through your business to address those issues. Determine priorities in terms of need, resources, and market. What are you able to do, given your market, given your resources, to address the needs of your own business, but also those of the community? Tell people what you're doing and why. And by people, I mean your clients, your communities, and the business partners, and then report what you've achieved. It's a relatively simple process. If you do these things, you'll be using tourism rather than being used by it. I wanted just to say a word about who or what is the competition. People tend to think that the competition is the guest house down the road. And to some extent that's true. But the bigger issue is all the other destinations within a 2 or 3 hour travelling distance of Johannesburg that tourists could choose to go to. You need to think about who the competition is and how your destination, that collection of accommodation, attractions, activities, events, what does that have to offer and how does it compare to your competition, given that your source market is Johannesburg and Pretoria, and some international, but primarily Pretoria and Johannesburg. And the benefit of having a local market of that kind is there's every chance that they will repeat visit if they have a good time. So, businesses and destinations effectively choice edit. It's what you offer that determines who comes. So you are, in determining what you provide, effectively choice editing. You're doing the marketing and the experience offer, and that is what attracts particular groups of clients. So you have more influence perhaps than you realize. The problem at the destination level is to manage that, to cooperate together and manage the destination so as to maximize the opportunity for all of the people who are wanting to engage in tourism in your community. Now, Michael Porter is famous for his work on cluster theory, and Bela-Bela and Thabazimbi are both clusters. The Waterberg is a bigger cluster. Essentially, it's a group of businesses who come together in a particular location and meet the needs of other businesses and of the community in the areas that they serve. But of course, these places are also people's homes, and we need to remember that we need to balance the development of tourism in ways that fit with the community spirit and bring local economic benefit through supplementary and alternative livelihoods and by engaging in integrated rural development. And you've got some amazing game parks in the Waterberg and a really big opportunity to bring people together to enjoy that, but also to spend money in the local community outside of the game parks. Porter and Kramer talk about reconceiving the products and the markets to meet social needs while better serving existing markets. This is not about philanthropy. It's about growing the cake and then enabling the local community to benefit from tourism. And of course, the businesses benefit because they get extended length of stay, they get lower costs through innovation and purchasing locally. Secondly, they say it's about redefining productivity in the value chain. improving the quality, the quantity, the reliability of supply, reducing costs, and stewarding essential natural resources so as to maximise the value sustainably into the future. And then enabling the development of a cluster of businesses to compete and thrive, creating reliable local suppliers, functioning infrastructure and road infrastructure, and of course a pool of talent which enables you to grow your business. So they argue strongly, and I think they're right, that there is a competitive advantage that comes from building a social value proposition into your business strategy. It's not about philanthropy, it's about doing business differently and benefiting yourself as a business and the community and your employees. So why is this coming to the fore at the moment? Well, one of the reasons is the growth in experiential tourism. It was Pine and Gilmore who wrote the first Harvard book on the experience economy, and they applied it to the world's major coffee franchise, basically arguing that what they'd done was to create an element of a local experience in each of their branches. So there's been a massive growth in the experience economy. People want to engage with local cultures, with community, and with their environment. And tourism, after all, is a shared product of the host interacting with the guest. The host can provide memorable experience, the guests are seeking them. And it's this which is driving much of the demand for tourism at the moment. And of course, the memories which are created and which people take home with them are co-created between the tourist and the local community. And that co-created memory is what creates the viral marketing. And that's the cheapest form of marketing there is, where someone has been to your destination, stayed in your guest house, been to your game farm, bought from that local craft market, talks to their friends and relatives about the great experience that they've had in the Waterberg. It was one of my students, Justin Francis, who I went on to set up responsibletravel.com with. He said the thing about responsible tourism is you can experience the difference. When you're in a place which is responsibly run, it feels different. The staff are friendly, they're efficient, they want to ensure that you have a good time. You can taste the difference in a way that you can't with fairly traded coffee. I think Justin is right about that. Just for the record, I sold my shares in Responsible Travel some time ago because of the potential conflict of interest in the advisory work that I do. So now, although I still strongly recommend Responsible Travel, I'm not in any way financially benefiting from those recommendations. What's happening is a shift from people looking for value for money to be people looking for experience for money. And you can see that in the range of activities being offered in the resorts in Bela-Bela and the richness of the opportunities in Thabazimbi for people to come and holiday in what I think is a really great destination. The viral marketing is the big prize from the quality and depth of the experiences that people can have in the Waterberg. In case you just think I'm not basing this on any evidence, I'm going to look at the evidence from Booking.com's major surveys in 2023 and 2024 in a minute. The 2025 data is not yet published. If you're interested, as soon as it is published, it will go up on that web link address at the bottom of the page. So what we see between 2022 and 2023 is an 8% increase in the number of people who say that they want to travel with companies who offer more sustainable travel choices. And you can see that 51% of people in this survey of 30,000 say that there are not enough sustainable travel options available. And it's obviously no longer just a European thing. You see Thailand there, 70% say that there aren't enough of these options. 44% of people don't know where to find sustainable options. Now there's a business opportunity, it's a market opportunity there staring you in the face. 75% of people seek authentic experiences that are representative of the local culture. 40% don't know how or where to find tours and activities that will ensure that they give back to the local communities. The market trend is really going in that direction. The 2024 research looked at this in a bit more detail and find that 62% of travellers recognise that they're the best version of themselves when they're travelling. 67% feel that witnessing sustainable practices while travelling inspires them to do something more at home. And 96% of people who did tours or activities which involved authentic local and cultural experiences. 93% shopped at small independent stores. 93% planned their trips so that they could walk, cycle, or take public transport. It just makes sense now to be offering these things. It's the direction in which the market is travelling, and frankly, travelling at considerable pace. So to turn briefly to the business cases for responsible tourism, it's not singular. The first reason to take responsibility for tourism is that it is the right thing to do. If we're going to leave a world fit for our children and grandchildren, we need to take responsibility and to make the activity of tourism far more sustainable than it currently is. Krippendorf talked about it as an extractive industry, and I think that's right. In a lot of places it is as extractive as mining, in a different way perhaps, but nonetheless extractive. So there are a series of business reasons which appeal to different parts of a board of directors. It's about minimising risk. It's about making sure that your health and safety is in place. It's about making sure that your business will still be operating in a few years' time. It's about license to operate. If you lose the support of the local community, they can make the place a very unattractive one to visit. Just look at the demonstrations which have taken place in the Mediterranean. But it's not only demonstrations against over-tourism that can be a problem. Think about Jamaica. It's about product quality. There are cost savings to be had by having things produced locally, and it's likely to be fresher if you're talking about produce, and you're reducing your transport costs. People never talk about staff morale, but one of the biggest costs in any tourism business is the cost of training the personnel who work for you. If you can retain them, because they feel that not only are they treated well in their employment, but that they're benefiting their community, then the quality of your service and your staff training budget, quality of the service goes up, the staff training budget remains static. Training new staff is expensive and it has implications for quality whilst you're doing it. And then we come to the more normal reasons that are talked about. The market advantages of richer experiences, more authentic, guilt-free experiences. Need to remember that referrals and repeats are the cheapest form of marketing. You don't need to do any. People are just coming of their own volition, and that people don't recommend things where they might be embarrassed by something which is unethical, irresponsible. They don't want to recommend their friends to come if they have any fear that their friends will come back and tell them that they didn't enjoy their holiday or they didn't like some aspects of the place that you have recommended. So it really matters for reputation that you take responsibility for making tourism better. So if you are a business, think about it. You're getting a better product, a better experience. You've got an enhanced product to sell. You've got the advantages of loyalty from repeats and referrals. You've got differentiation in a crowded marketplace. You are distinguishing yourself from the others without necessarily criticizing the others, but nonetheless making the point that you've got something special to offer. It's non-price competition, and price competition results in lower margins and ultimately in bankruptcy. It's a chance to use your product, your service, your activity, your experience to attract a particular market segment to your place. It gives added relevance to products you might not have thought were particularly saleable. Things like locally produced jams and chutneys, and for people going back to the big city, fresh vegetables to take with them. The opportunity to sell craft. Big opportunities to develop new products We all want to have guilt-free holidays. Nobody wants to go back feeling guilty about the way they've spent their leisure time. And we all want better experiences, and that means finding better ways of interacting with the communities and their environments. None of this is rocket science. You don't need a consultant necessarily to help you do this. You just need to change the way you think about what you're doing in running your tourism business and make yourself more profitable by taking responsibility and making yourself fit the market better as the market changes, demanding more experiential tourism. So we're about using tourism to make better places to live in. And when you talk with politicians, you need to say to them, do we want to be a place that uses tourism to make this a better place, whether that's Bela-Bela, Thabazimbi, or one of the other places in the Waterberg? Do we want to do that, or do we want to be used by tourism? And that's a choice that we have in the way we manage and market our tourism. So we ran the Responsible Tourism Awards at WTM Africa this year. 20 organisations from 9 countries, all of them across Africa, were recognised in the 2025 World Travel Market Responsible Tourism Awards. It's worth having a look at the kinds of things which people won for. The categories are also on the website, and in a few years' time, who knows? Maybe one of the towns in the Waterberg will enter and be successful in that competition. We usually have a category for shared value, which is where I think you would fit very neatly. But have a look at the kinds of things we recognise in the citations on that website. So the ICRT Southern Africa network brings together different groups across Southern Africa who are involved in trying to make tourism more responsible to create better tourism. And really we're about creating partnerships for change where people can learn from the experience at others. And we had one at Pigs Peak just a couple of weeks ago, and that will be available online shortly. It's a real opportunity to learn from others about what works and what doesn't, and to ask questions about them. The man in the brown shirt there is Rupesh Kumar. The guy on the right is Adam Abar from the Gambia. Rupesh Kumar works in Kerala and took a couple of ideas from the 2008 conference on responsible tourism in destinations in Kerala. He took the idea of small producer cooperatives from Adam Abar's work in the Gambia, and he took the idea of township tours and made them village life experiences in India, where tourists get the opportunity to visit 6 or 7 different small producers in their homes in a village and to interact with them. Some wonderful experiences I've had doing that, really great experiences. So we're talking about sharing experiences and learning from the experiences of others, and that's really what the ICRT networks are about. We have one in Southern Africa, we have them in West Africa, India, Southeast Asia, and Latin America, and there are new ones starting right now. And most of that sharing happens on WhatsApp, which is a very cheap and easy way for people to pose a question and give answers if they're able to when people ask about how they might achieve a particular thing. So, successful tourist destinations offer something to the visitor which is unique. They create a sense of place, an identity which is different from their competitors, and no two communities are ever exactly the same. It's really important in the Waterberg that you ensure that each place is marketed in a slightly different way so that they all have their own unique identity. My wife and I go to Ludlow every year for the Ludlow Food and Drink Festival, and one of the things we like about Ludlow is that when we get there we do feel that we're being treated as temporary residents. We've got friends there now because we go every year. Well, we didn't go during COVID, but we've been going every year for 25 years. And then in that time you meet and make some friends. So it's always attractive to go back. We've become very much repeat visitors there and very keen to recommend it to others as something they'll enjoy. So to make this work, you've got to get local government, tourism and hospitality, the community, the game farms, businesses, and industry, particularly the mines, to work together. Now, that's never easy, but it is really important that you bring all of those stakeholder groups together to achieve responsible tourism and make tourism better in the Waterberg. And you need to decide, each of those clusters within the Waterberg need to decide who it is that they want to attract. It seems to me that the two I've visited, Thabazimbi and Bela-Bela, really attract very different groups. There's no real competition between them. You can work together to promote the Waterberg, but you're not competing with each other. You've got that sense of being different, attracting a different market. One of the things I don't think you make enough of in Thabazimbi is your mining heritage. As I came into town for the first time, I saw that wonderful collection of old mining equipment, which is by the side of the road, and I thought it'd be great to get a photograph of that and put it in the presentation. It really announces the important thing about the history of Thabazimbi, and I thought, well, there'll be a photograph on Google that I can just find and use. Well, I'm afraid there isn't. So there is no photograph here of that, but you'll be familiar with what I'm talking about. What I do think is important to realise is that people are interested in the geology, and it's endlessly fascinating for people to understand what's under their feet, what the mines are mining and what that's being used for, but also to understand the relationship between the geology and what we see above ground in the natural environment and in the landscape that we look at. It's a fascinating subject and many people are interested in it. Ulembu is on the South Africa-Swaziland border. It's just inside Swaziland. It's close to Pikes Peak. I was fascinated to go there and to visit a retired, redundant asbestos mine there. Lots of interest, easily worth a day visit as a destination. And you've got functioning mines, which could be even more interesting. And let me remind you that the Cullinan Diamond Mine does tours for visitors. And again, lots of evidence that there's interest in doing that. So I want now to change gears slightly and look at what can happen when you do partner with communities. I'm taking two case studies from Glyn O'Leary, who's the CEO of TFPD, Transfrontier Parks Destinations. He's recently, a year or so ago, taken over Pikes Peak Hotel, and some of these examples are from Eswatini, in a landscape not that different from what I see around me here in the Waterberg. This gives a sense of the shared value that's been created in just one financial year by local sourcing and by employment. And it's really very dramatic. You might be surprised to see that figure of nearly 160,000 rand spent on accommodation, but that's because when the hotel is full, they put the guests out to stay in other accommodation and pay for it. Now that's further money going into the local economy. These are dramatic indications of what can be achieved by a hotel in a destination. I've got here just a few photographs of the kinds of things that tourists can do. This is Carol Stevens weaving and finishing work being done at Tinsaba. These are great places to visit for tourists, and of course they will buy as they leave. They want to take away crafts and artworks as souvenirs of their visit. This is a roadside crafter's stall and somebody spinning wool at Coral Stevens. It makes their job a little bit more interesting. They have the opportunity to talk to people from outside of their local community, and for the tourist it's just a great experience to have that opportunity to meet with local people. Now this is an interesting example because sisal mats are fascinating and quite difficult to get in the UK where I live. They're difficult to get, of course, because they're too big to put on an aeroplane and take home with you. But if Thabazimbi could set up a a reliable exporter of craft products to the UK, or Bela-Bela could do the same. For the international visitors who are not going to arrive by car, there's every opportunity then of buying a sisal mat to have in their home. But you have the really big advantage that yours is largely a local domestic tourism market, and people can put these in their cars and take them home if you make sisal mats. But it isn't just about this. It can be large statuesque figures made of wood or cast from bronze, and there's some very beautiful metal iron statues and statuettes in Thabazimbi, where I was for the tour. So think on about whether there is an opportunity to create a reliable export model which could work both nationally and internationally. This one just took my breath away. This is New York style weaving. It's tapestries being put together for a very high-end home. The work's being done in Eswatini. And you see the quality of that. It's extremely striking as a piece of artwork. So what TFPD are about largely is partnering with communities to commercialise their tourism assets. They enter into management agreements with rural communities to manage, operate and market their assets. Now those assets are both the lodges, which are often the product of a land claim, a restitution of land, and they get a lodge is built for them. But they're not able to operate that lodge themselves, so they need to employ a management company to do that. Hilton, the owners of Hilton Hotels, for example, it's true of all their big hotel chains, they employ Hilton to manage those hotels on their behalf. The owners don't try to manage them. So what we're talking about here is commercializing the tourism assets, whether that's accommodation, an attraction or guide service. They can all be taken to market. They can all be used to benefit the local community. This is their lodge, TFPD's lodge at Vitsisuk, which they manage on behalf of the Tokwa community. You can see the scale and the drama of that particular place. It's not an easy lodge to manage. It's in a remote location, but that's what they do. So when they came to furnish the lodge, when they took it over, they brought up 8 sets of furniture for the lodge rooms to get the first 8 rooms open. And they talked to Mr. Maletti, who makes furniture in the local community, about whether he could copy, as Glyn puts it, steal with his eyes from the furniture that he saw brought up from Cape Town. And sure enough, after a few false starts, he was able to make the furniture for the other rooms in the lodge, making a very significant amount of earnings from that, and that's local spend by the lodge. Local potter, Tefo Mukasani, and he was asked whether he'd make the bases for the bedside lamps. And he said he didn't do bases for bedside lamps, but Gillian, Glyn's wife, pointed out that if you turned it upside down, put a hole in the bottom and the light fitting on the top, you had effectively made a bedside light, and that's what happened, and the bedside lights are still there in the lodge. This is actually from their work in Limpopo, but again, emphasizing the importance of the fresh fruit and vegetables as an attractive part of the experience of a rural area when you're coming out from the big city to spend the weekend. What an opportunity to eat freshly picked fruit in season when you're out in the Waterberg. And then the development of new small businesses, in this case, horse riding. You can see here the figures. You'll be able to look at them in some detail, but what I point out is that this is very easy data to create. You just add an additional few columns, and you can see the bed occupancy had gone up from about 12% in 2011 to 34% just before COVID. struck, and then of course the occupancy is reduced. But you can see also that they turned the lodge to profit in that period until again COVID interfered and profitability was lost. Number of jobs dramatically increased from 26 in 2011 to 53 in 2022, and that's in the height of COVID. Local procurement, things made locally, things purchased locally, slightly different. It's really the local origin that we're interested in. Then the community benefit in terms of staff remuneration and benefits, the rental, the investment for the future in the asset, and then the regional economic benefit. And what you see, of course, is that the big green area on the map to the right is the refurbishment of the hotel when it was open. That becomes a small but more regular stream, and you see the increase in the staff remuneration and benefits, tipping down during COVID, but nonetheless they stayed employed and continued to receive a salary. It makes people happy. Now, if we turn our attention to Klaus Lodge up in the Kalahari, similar things are true. Guides are teachers. They introduce people to the beauty of the desert and they show them what's there, which they would not see if they went off to walk on their own. It's remarkable what you can find in the desert if you know where to look and how to look for it. Again, the detailed data collected in exactly the same way, showing the results through from 2008 to 2022. Again, makes people happy. So, what needs to happen in the Waterberg is that people need to pull together to create successful tourist destinations, and it's important to focus on the differences between the different communities in the Waterberg and not reduce everything to a sort of average. You need to pick out what's special about each of the places and help them to get the right kind of tourists in the right place at the right time to maximise the value to the local community, but also to maximise the quality of the experience that the tourist has, because that's where reputation is built and that's where repeats and referrals come from. So we're back with this critical question about who you want to attract and invite. If you want further information, there are some sources there. Thank you for listening. I wish the towns and communities in the Waterberg every success, and I'm happy to help where I can.